He's back, and he didn't come alone. After months of silence, Roman Reigns has finally returned to WWE, and he's not riding solo. In a jaw-dropping moment, the tribal chief aligned with none other than Jon Moxley, sending shockwaves through the WWE Universe as they declare all-out war on Seth Rollins' rising faction. In this video, we break down every moment of this historic return, the shocking alliance with Moxley, and what it means for the future of WWE's power structure. Tensions are rising, loyalties are shifting, and war is inevitable. The arena was already electric when the lights abruptly cut to black. For a moment, time stood still inside the sold-out Barclays Center. The hum of anticipation gave way to silence, broken only by the flicker of phone flashlights capturing the unknown. Then, without warning, Roman Reigns' theme thundered through the speakers. Gasps erupted across the crowd. Commentators were left speechless. In a single beat, the impossible became reality. Roman Reigns had returned to Monday Night Raw. 100 days of silence. 100 days without a statement, a video, not even a tweet. And now, without warning or build-up, the tribal chief was walking down the ramp like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. What unfolded on that ramp was not just a wrestling return, it was a reckoning. With every step, Roman's presence screamed of unresolved vengeance, political chess games, and secrets buried beneath the steel and spotlight of WWE. But where had he been? And why now? This was no ordinary return. WWE sources had gone dark for months. Whispers in the locker room told of chaos behind the curtain, fractures within the bloodline, meetings behind closed doors, lawsuits, medical records, gag orders. And then, silence. Roman had vanished not only from Raw and SmackDown, but from all digital platforms, stripped even from WWE's internal PR rotations. It was as if he had been erased. Yet tonight, in front of 18,000 stunned fans and millions watching around the globe, he walked with a gaze colder than the Arctic. His signature glove clenched tighter than ever. His breath calculated. His stare, vacant and deadly. This wasn't the same Roman who raised gold and barked orders at Jimmy, Jay, and Solo. No. This man had returned with a different mission, and the company knew it. Just beyond the camera lens, a select few WWE producers were seen scrambling, headsets buzzing, scripts being rewritten in real time. Because they had no control over this. Roman Reigns wasn't booked to return. He decided to. And that's where this story begins. Rewind to exactly 100 days ago. WrestleMania 41 had just concluded in Los Angeles. Roman Reigns was not seen at the official post-show press conference. He skipped the traditional Champions curtain call. Cameras searched for him backstage, but all they caught was an unmarked black SUV speeding away from SoFi Stadium, windows tinted, license plates obscured. That night, WWE staff reportedly received a mass email from Roman's legal team, effective immediately. Mr. Reigns is withdrawing from all public appearances and media obligations under Clause 9C of his performer agreement. No further comment will be provided. Clause 9C. A rarely used stipulation buried deep within the WWE talent contract system. It allows top-tier performers to enact a protective silence clause in case of medical, familial, or reputational threats to the performer's career or public image. The message was clear. Something had happened. Something big enough to force the face of WWE into exile. Within days, backstage insiders reported a complete lockdown around anything Roman Reigns related. His merchandise was quietly pulled from fan events. Promotional materials were reprinted with Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, or LA Knight instead. Internal Slack channels saw directives labeled RR embargo. Even Paul Heyman refused to comment, reportedly telling producers, "It's not my place to speak. The chief will return when the time is right." But what triggered it? Those closest to the situation spoke only in code. Family fractures, mental overload, legal whispers. It wasn't just about wrestling. This was personal. A source within WWE's legal division later leaked fragments of internal memos suggesting Roman had discovered something that shattered his loyalty to the bloodline. While details were redacted, one sentence stood out: if these claims proved true, it would constitute a breach of trust tantamount to emotional sabotage. No further explanation was offered. But rumors took root. Some said Solo Sikoa had orchestrated a power grab behind Roman's back, consolidating influence over bloodline assets and appearances during Roman's vulnerable post-WrestleMania state. Others pointed to Paul Heyman, whose sudden closeness with Seth Rollins sparked suspicion. A few even speculated that medical records had been leaked, possibly revealing a diagnosis Roman wanted kept hidden. Whatever it was, Roman vanished. And WWE moved on. Or so they thought. During those 100 days, Raw underwent a transformation. Seth Rollins cemented his faction's grip on power. Solo Sikoa declared himself heir to the island. The bloodline became more ruthless than ever, attacking legends, undermining champions, rewriting the tribal narrative. And then, there were the signs. At first, they seemed like coincidences. A backstage door left slightly ajar. A locker room camera mysteriously shut off during an altercation involving Jey Uso. An envelope slipped under Triple H's office door with no return address, marked only by the phrase, "You forgot who made this table." Weeks later, Paul Heyman was seen leaving a WWE boardroom with tears in his eyes and a phone clutched so tightly his knuckles were white. An executive producer was overheard whispering to another, "He's coming back." But not for the pop. For the reckoning. And now, he had returned. Back in the present, Roman Reigns stood in the center of the Raw ring, microphone in hand. But he didn't speak. Not yet. The crowd roared, waiting for a declaration, a line, a catchphrase. But he stayed silent. Cameras panned to the announce desk. Corey Graves looked stunned. Michael Cole's voice cracked as he whispered, "We weren't prepared for this." "I don't think anyone was." Then Roman raised the mic, and lowered it again. Instead, he simply pulled something from under his vest. A sealed folder. He dropped it to the mat. The camera zoomed in. The cover read, "Confidential, Bloodline Asset Disclosure, for Public Record." And walked out. No words. No attack. Just that folder left behind. Within moments, the broadcast cut to black, not a commercial break, just black. As if WWE itself didn't know what to do next. Behind the scenes, security scrambled. Lawyers were called. Agents texted in all caps. Because whatever was in that folder, it wasn't part of the script. And that's what made it real. Over the next 48 hours, chaos unfolded. WWE's corporate offices were inundated with calls. Sponsors demanded meetings. The phrase Roman Reigns trended at #1 on social media in 37 countries. Fans began dissecting freeze frames of the folder. Some claimed they could see the faint watermark of the Anoa'i family crest. Others spotted initials next to signature lines, JS, SSPH, and one more, RR. On wrestling podcasts and insider forums, speculation ran wild. Was it a manifesto? A legal takedown? A bloodline betrayal exposé? Some claimed the folder contained notarized evidence that Roman Reigns had been forcibly removed from decision-making around bloodline storylines. That his creative control clause had been overridden without consent. That Solo Sikoa and Heyman had leveraged a technicality to sideline him and rewrite the tribal chief legacy. The implications were seismic. If true, Roman Reigns wasn't just coming back for a match. He was coming back for war. And the world was watching. But behind the spectacle, beyond the pyro and chants, there was a man. A father. A husband. A performer who had carried WWE through a pandemic, a fractured locker room, and a family legacy built on blood, sacrifice, and loyalty. In an off-the-record conversation, one of Roman's closest friends, speaking under anonymity, said it best, he gave them everything. Years of his life. His body. His soul. And when he needed time to process the betrayal, they pretended like he never existed. That folder? It's not revenge. It's proof. Proof of what, exactly? That remains to be seen. But one thing is clear. The tribal chief didn't come back to entertain. He came back to reclaim what was stolen, his legacy, his family, and maybe, something even more sacred. His name. And as Raw fades to black once again in the coming week, one question echoes louder than any entrance music. What happens when the man who built the kingdom returns to burn it down? 2 days after his return, the backstage corridors of WWE headquarters in Stamford were no longer buzzing, they were on edge. Executives moved in and out of closed-door meetings. Legal advisors carried manila folders with expressions tighter than steel cables. For years, Roman Reigns had been WWE's golden compass, guiding the company through uncertain times with dominance, charisma, and gravitas. Now, he had become their biggest wild card. Because for the first time in a decade, WWE didn't control the narrative. Roman did. That sealed folder he left in the ring? It wasn't just symbolic, it was actionable. According to insiders, the documents inside were real legal disclosures, signed amendments, financial breakdowns, power of attorney transfers regarding the bloodline's name, image, likeness, and storyline rights. The folder contained redacted emails between high-ranking creative officials, a timeline of contract revisions, and one chilling line highlighted on every page: any movement on isolating RR from bloodline production? That single phrase told the whole story. Roman hadn't stepped away voluntarily. He had been sidelined, surgically removed from the dynasty he built brick by brick. The whispers grew louder. For months, Roman Reigns had felt tension within the locker room. Triple H had publicly praised the next generation while subtly reducing Roman's screen time. Paul Heyman, once his wisest counsel, had begun spending more time in meetings with Seth Rollins and upper-level producers. Solo Sikoa, once the silent enforcer of the family, had emerged as a new kind of tribal leader, cold, tactical, and dangerously ambitious. It all clicked after WrestleMania. While Roman lay in the medical wing following an untelevised post-match injury. Rumored to be a cracked rib and minor concussion, Heyman reportedly met with Solo and an attorney representing the Anoa'i estate. The topic of that meeting? Unknown. But in the weeks that followed, WWE's internal structure shifted dramatically. Bloodline merchandise no longer featured Roman's likeness. Creative rundowns began featuring Bloodline 2.0 as the official working title. And in a now infamous production meeting, an executive allegedly said, Roman's presence was great. But the story moves on. Except Roman hadn't agreed to move on. At home in Florida, recovering in silence, he watched the empire evolve without him. Watched as Solo declared himself head of the island. Watched as Jimmy Uso returned only to betray his brother Jay again. Watched as Heyman nodded on commentary but never once uttered Roman's name. And then, came the final blow. A memo leaked to Roman's private team. WWE was preparing to move forward with a declaration of storyline succession. A clause that would formally transfer tribal chief status to Solo Sikoa on-screen and in character without Roman's participation. That's when the silence broke. Roman activated Clause 9C of his contract, halting all public appearances. He instructed his team to begin collecting records, emails, footage, and correspondence. He pulled out of press tours. He ghosted marketing teams. And while the WWE Universe speculated about a planned break, he was assembling a legal case not just to reclaim his spot, but to expose the truth. Because for Roman, this wasn't just a betrayal. It was treason. And now, he had returned. Not to wrestle. Not to entertain. But to reveal. On the next Monday Night Raw, the fallout began. The opening segment was interrupted by a sharp cut to black and white footage. The screen read, "The following footage is presented without WWE approval." Then came the leak. Footage of Paul Heyman in a dimly lit conference room, timestamped 11 days after WrestleMania, saying, "Roman's emotional bandwidth is depleted. We have an opportunity here. Solo is ready." Another clip. Triple H on a video call, "Look, if Reigns isn't responding, we move forward. We can't hold up the company for someone who won't play ball." And finally, one email. Verified, timestamped, unedited. From a WWE corporate account. Ensure all new bloodline-related trademarks exclude RR likeness or initials. Legal needs deniability. The audience gasped. Online, fans exploded. This wasn't just a scripted feud. This was WWE's most protected secrets, aired out live. Michael Cole stuttered on commentary. Corey Graves covered his mic and muttered, "What the hell are we watching?" In the ring that night, Solo Sikoa appeared with Paul Heyman. But neither looked confident. They weren't in control anymore. They were on trial. In front of millions. Heyman tried to spin it, claiming the clips were out of context, that Roman was still family, and that everything had been approved. But the crowd wasn't buying it. "Chance of you betrayed him," filled the arena. Then, Roman appeared again. But this time, he didn't walk to the ring. He entered from the crowd, hood over his head, the roar of 18,000 fans parting like a tidal wave around him. He took the mic and finally, for the first time in 100 days, spoke. "You didn't replace me. You removed me. You stabbed me in the back while I bled for this ring. You wanted a bloodline without the blood." The crowd erupted. "I watched this company give the island to wolves and let them wear my crown. You think I left because I was weak? I left because you were plotting while I healed. Now I'm not here to wrestle. I'm here to cleanse this kingdom." He dropped the mic, turned to Heyman, who stood trembling, and whispered something too quiet for cameras to catch. But later, lip readers on social media interpreted the words as, "You were family. Now you're a casualty." That same night, WWE announced an emergency press conference. They called it a creative realignment. But fans weren't fooled. Behind the corporate spin, it was clear, WWE had underestimated Roman Reigns, and now the tribal chief had seized back his throne, not with fists, but with facts. Backstage, morale was split. Some superstars applauded Roman's return. Others whispered about the danger of breaking the fourth wall. A veteran producer reportedly said, "If Roman keeps exposing the system like this, the whole house of cards collapses." But Roman didn't care. He wasn't playing the game anymore. He was flipping the board. The week after, he released a personal video, unsanctioned by WWE, on his private channel. No music. No edits. Just Roman, in a dark studio, looking directly into the camera. "I carried this place when it was on life support. I gave you stories when you had nothing. I kept the industry alive through chaos. And you tried to delete me? Nah. I am the narrative now." He ended the video with one sentence, "Next week. I name names." And the world held its breath. Because this wasn't just about wrestling anymore. It was about legacy, loyalty, and the cost of silence. Roman Reigns had returned. Not as a champion. Not as a performer. But as a man betrayed, now ready to tear down the empire he built. And the most dangerous part? He hadn't even started yet. The following week's episode of Raw opened without a theme song. Just silence. The usual commentary banter was absent. The screen faded in from black, revealing an empty ring under a single spotlight. The silence lingered for a full 15 seconds before Roman Reigns' voice echoed, not live, but in voiceover. "I gave them everything. They gave me paperwork." Cut to Roman, seated in a stark, dimly lit room. No production lighting. No logos. Just the man behind the mythology, staring into the lens. They wanted names. Fine. He raised a stack of files, bound in crimson string, each one labeled with initials. Tonight, I tell you who signed the betrayal. Who watched it happen. Who stood by while they tried to erase me from the story I built. Then the screen went dark again. The audience, watching both live and on TV, sat in stunned anticipation. This wasn't an episode of Raw. It was an inquisition. When the broadcast resumed, Roman wasn't alone. In the center of the ring stood a single wooden table, and seated across from him, by what had to be divine irony, was Paul Heyman. Flanked by WWE security, his expression twisted between guilt and defiance. Roman didn't speak at first. He let the crowd drown Heyman in chants of "You sold out, and you're not wise." Then came the first folder. Roman opened it. Inside was a printed email exchange between Heyman and WWE Legal, dated 2 days after Roman's disappearance. In the emails, Heyman advocated for a controlled narrative shift away from RR, proposing that Solo take over the tribal chief identity. Attached was a document titled Bloodline Rebranding Strategy, with a horrifying note at the bottom: RR will not resist. He's too prideful to return mid-arc. Roman held it up for the camera. Prideful? You didn't think I'd come back because you thought I cared about optics. But I care about truth. About legacy. And Paul, you buried both. Heyman tried to speak, but Roman cut him off. I was your greatest project. You molded me. And when you couldn't control the outcome, you threw me into the shadows. He paused, eyes narrowing. You were family. The camera zoomed in on Heyman's eyes, glassy and wide. You were blood. And then Roman flipped the next page in the folder, an NDA. A non-disclosure agreement signed by Heyman and Solo, agreeing to limit public and internal references to RR as part of the bloodline moving forward. In exchange, Heyman would receive 3% of future bloodline merchandise revenue. The crowd gasped. 3%, Paul. That's what I was worth. Heyman's lips quivered. He muttered, "It wasn't like that," but Roman leaned in. Say it louder. So the world can hear what betrayal sounds like. Then, he stood. You manipulated my cousin. You poisoned the family. You signed my legacy away for scraps. He turned to the camera. Solo. I'm coming for you next. And with that, Roman dropped the mic again, not out of drama, but because there was simply nothing left to say. He walked out of the ring as WWE officials swarmed Heyman, some of them visibly shaken. The illusion of fiction had shattered. This wasn't about characters anymore. This was an exposé unfolding in real time. And the fallout? Immediate. Within hours of the broadcast, social media imploded. #Bloodline corruption trended at #1 globally. WWE sponsors, caught off guard by the unfiltered nature of Roman's return, issued statements demanding clarity. Rumors swirled that an emergency board meeting was scheduled for the next morning in Stamford. And Solo Sikoa? Silent. Not a tweet. Not a promo. Not even a backstage appearance. Because the next shoe was about to drop, and everyone knew it. That Friday on SmackDown, Roman didn't appear in the ring. Instead, a USB drive was delivered to commentary by an anonymous source. It was marked only with one phrase, "For the record." The footage shown was raw and unedited, security cam footage from a WWE production truck dated 6 weeks earlier. It showed Solo, Jimmy Uso, and Paul Heyman in a closed-door conversation. Their audio was faint B. Stand by for unscheduled segment, Roman Reigns, Solo confrontation. All staff clear ringside. And so it happened. With no music. No announcement. No fanfare. Roman walked through the crowd and into the ring one more time. And this time, Solo Sikoa met him. The face-off was nuclear. The arena rumbled under the weight of silence and adrenaline. Roman didn't flinch. You wanted the island. You wanted the throne. You did all that in my name, while erasing mine. Solo stepped forward, breathing heavy. You abandoned the family. We made it stronger. Stronger? Roman spat. You made it smaller. You made it colder. You made it a business deal. Solo's eyes narrowed. He reached into his hoodie and pulled out his own sealed folder. He held it up. You think you're the only one with truth? Roman tilted his head. Open it. Solo didn't blink. He tore it open and threw the contents at Roman's feet. Pages scattered across the canvas. Among them, photos. Screenshots. Emails. One photo stood out, a medical record. Roman's medical record. The crowd gasped. Roman's face changed. Solo stepped forward. You wanted truth? Tell them why you really left. The camera zoomed in. At the top of the document, confidential, autoimmune blood panel, February 3rd. The date was 2 months before WrestleMania. Below that, words blurred by movement, but legible enough. Initial signs of immunosuppressive fatigue. Medical recommendation. Withdraw from physical activity. A hush fell over the audience. Roman stood, his jaw tight. No words. No rebuttal. Solo whispered, we didn't push you out. We protected your legacy. You disappeared, before anyone could see the cracks. Roman's hands shook. He stepped forward. You're lying. Then deny it. But Roman didn't. Instead, he knelt down and picked up the pages. His eyes scanned them. His lips pressed into a line. He didn't speak. He didn't throw a punch. He just walked out. No music. No pyro. Just silence. And in that moment, the WWE Universe understood the full magnitude of what had unfolded. Roman Reigns had returned not as a god, not as a warrior, not as the head of the table, but as a man. A man facing betrayal, and now, a truth he tried to bury. In the days that followed, WWE became ground zero for the most volatile media storm in wrestling history. The industry wasn't just reacting to a return, it was witnessing the unraveling of an empire. Every podcast, every YouTube channel, every insider newsletter echoed the same question: was Roman Reigns hiding a diagnosis the entire time? WWE's silence was deafening. No official statement. No press release. Just reruns of the confrontation airing on every show in a desperate attempt to control the narrative. But control was no longer possible. Because this wasn't a storyline anymore. It was a crisis. And at the center of it, Roman Reigns, once a symbol of unstoppable power, had been reduced to a man haunted by 2 betrayals, one by his family, and another by his own body. Back at his home in Florida, Roman reportedly declined all media requests. Sources close to his camp claimed he was completely shut in, speaking only to his immediate family and legal team. But then, one video surfaced. Not from Roman. From his wife, Galina Becker. Posted to a private account, later shared by fan pages, Galina appeared in a sunlit kitchen, her eyes red-rimmed, her voice trembling. You all think he walked away because of ego. But the truth is, he didn't want the world to see him weaken. He needed time. He needed peace. But even that was taken from him. She paused, choking back tears. So yes, he stayed quiet. Because the man who stood for all of you didn't know if he could stand at all. The video was pulled within an hour. But the damage, or the healing, had already begun. Fans who once demanded answers began flooding comment sections with apologies. #WeStandWithRoman began trending. Messages of support poured in from fellow wrestlers, rivals, even former Bloodline members who had gone silent for months. Jey Uso posted a single photo on Instagram, Roman raising his arm during their tag team win from 2020. The caption, "He carried us. We forgot." Inside WWE, however, things were far less sentimental. Solo Sikoa's folder had opened a Pandora's box. Leaked internal documents revealed that WWE executives had known of Roman's medical issues as far back as late January. Doctors had recommended a scaled-back schedule. Roman had reportedly agreed, on one condition, that his leadership within the bloodline be respected. But instead, they moved forward with a succession plan, one that was as much about protecting the brand as it was about protecting Roman. Privately, board members had feared backlash if Roman's condition became public. Sponsors might panic. Investors might jump ship. So they orchestrated a quiet transfer of power. Solo Sikoa wasn't just a successor. He was the contingency plan. And Paul Heyman? He was the bridge between two regimes. But what none of them accounted for was Roman Reigns' resilience. Just 1 week after disappearing again, he re-emerged. Not in the ring. Not on television. But in court. Yes, court. Roman Reigns filed a temporary injunction against WWE, claiming unauthorized use of his likeness and breach of contract. The filing alleged that his removal from Bloodline creative rights violated sections of his exclusive performer agreement. Attached were pages of evidence, emails, memos, private agreements, all pointing to a concerted effort to phase Roman out without his consent. The most damning clause? A previously sealed clause labeled Bloodline Ownership Equity, which gave Roman partial rights to all narrative and branding decisions regarding the faction. In legal terms, WWE's actions weren't just questionable. They were actionable. The court documents were obtained by journalists, and the headlines exploded. Roman sues WWE over bloodline ownership. WWE faces legal firestorm as tribal chief fights back. But perhaps the most shocking revelation? In his court testimony, delivered via video, Roman Reigns did not deny his condition. Instead, he owned it. In a recorded statement played for the court and, later, released to the public, Roman appeared in a simple black hoodie, face stoic, voice low. Yes. I was diagnosed with autoimmune fatigue. Yes, I needed time. But what I didn't need was to be erased. He looked into the camera. I fought through leukemia. I came back stronger. I carried this industry through storms. And when I needed just a moment of silence, the empire I built turned on me. He folded his hands. So let me be clear. I'm not here to ruin WWE. I'm here to rebuild it. One truth at a time. The reaction was seismic. For the first time in years, Roman Reigns wasn't a heel. He wasn't a face. He wasn't a character. He was a man. Vulnerable. Furious. And determined. And that made him more powerful than ever. WWE scrambled to settle. According to insiders, Triple H personally reached out to Roman's team requesting a private meeting. Sponsors threatened to pull out unless WWE offered a resolution. And backstage, the locker room was split between those who respected Roman's fight and those who feared what might come next. Because Roman's return had triggered more than emotion. It had triggered a reckoning. And it was far from over. In the final moments of that week's SmackDown, without hype, without promotion, a graphic appeared. Next Friday, Roman Reigns addresses the WWE Universe, one last time. The world stopped. Was this a farewell? A truce? Or a declaration of war? Nobody knew. But one thing was certain, the tribal chief wasn't asking for the table anymore. He was flipping it. Friday night arrived like a slow-rolling thunderstorm. The tension inside the arena was palpable. Every seat filled, every eye fixed on the entrance ramp, every breath suspended in a collective wait for what might be Roman Reigns' final words in a WWE ring. The lights dimmed. No music played. No graphics flashed. Just one word pulsed across the Titantron in blood-red letters, truth. And then, he appeared. Roman Reigns, dressed not in his traditional vest or merchandise, but in a tailored black suit. No entrance music. No entourage. No pyro. Just Roman, walking the aisle with the solemnity of a judge entering a courtroom. When he stepped into the ring, he didn't pose. He didn't raise his arms. He simply stood in silence, taking in the sea of faces, some hopeful, some heartbroken, some angry, all locked onto him. He raised the microphone and, for a moment, said nothing. Just let the weight of the moment settle. Then came his voice. 114 days ago, I left this ring. Not because I was defeated. Not because I was broken. But because I was betrayed. The crowd remained hushed, hanging on every syllable. I gave this business 20 years. I gave WWE my body, my blood, my breath. I led the locker room through pandemics, through loss, through war. And when I asked for silence, they gave me erasure. He stepped forward, his voice steady. You didn't see the meetings. You didn't hear the whispers. But I did. They didn't want the tribal chief. They wanted a replacement. A cheaper version. A controllable puppet. They wanted a bloodline without a heart. The audience began to stir. A chant began rising from the crowd, you deserve better. You deserve better. Roman nodded, but not with pride. With pain. They said I walked away. No. I was pushed. Pushed out by people I trusted. By family. By Heyman. By the same voices that said they'd fight with me until the end. He paused, then removed his jacket. Folded it neatly and set it on the mat. As if preparing for a final fight. Not physical, but emotional. When I came back, it wasn't for glory. It was to reclaim something sacred. My name. My truth. My legacy. And now that you know it, I can speak freely. He turned toward the hard camera. Solo Sikoa. You are not the tribal chief. You are not the heir. You are not my successor. You are my brother's son. You are my blood. But you are not my shadow. A gasp moved through the arena. Roman had never spoken so directly. Never stripped away the mythology so brutally. I watched you grow from silence into violence. And I understand why you did what you did. But understand this, when you took my place, you didn't inherit my power. You inherited my burden. Then his tone changed, slower, softer, heavy. And to the WWE, you let this happen. You let greed silence history. You saw my medical report, and instead of support, you drafted a new kingdom in secret. But know this, he walked to the center of the ring, eyes locked with the camera. I am not done. A thunderous roar erupted. I am not finished. You thought you saw my last reign. You thought the island fell into the ocean. He smirked, just faintly. But I am the ocean. The crowd lost it. Roman. 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 He raised his hand. Silence fell again. But this time. I don't want the crown. I don't want the title. I don't want the table. He looked around, eyes glistening. I want peace. A beat passed. But peace only comes after war. And with that, he dropped the mic. Not in bravado. But in finality. He stepped out of the ring, grabbed his jacket, and walked the ramp, slower than ever before. As if each step carried the full weight of every betrayal, every chant, every bruise. The camera followed him all the way to the top of the ramp. He turned back just once. Looked at the crowd. At the ring. At the legacy. Then, for the first time in months, he raised his fist to the sky. Not as the head of the table. But as a man who survived the storm. The screen faded to black. No commentary. No logo. Just silence. And then one final phrase appeared, "The last reign has begun."